Now then guys, Quinn's Dude here, back on the Rad Music Chat channel. Thanks so much for joining once again. If you're new here or you haven't subscribed yet, please do so, because that really does help, and also it'll let you know when there's new content up. Hit like on the video and have a look around the channel and see if there's any other videos that interest you. So what are we looking at today? Well, we're going to jump back into the 1001 Albums You Must Hear Before You Die book. I've chosen this album purely because a friend of mine has recently started collecting vinyl, and this was something he got lately, so I thought that would be a great album to do. And we are looking at Blondie's Parallel Lines from 1978. Parallel Lines is Blondie's third studio album, and the genres attached to this one are pop rock, new wave and punk. 2 albums deep into their career, and Blondie were doing fairly well in the UK and in mainland Europe, but in their home country, the band are from New York, they couldn't get arrested. So it was time to change things up, and they brought in a producer, the Australian Mike Chapman, who really whipped the band into shape and was a bit of a taskmaster. There's stories from the band about how difficult he was to work with and vice versa. In the years after recording Parallel Lines, Chapman has been quoted as saying that Blondie were the worst band he'd ever worked with, musical ability wise, except for guitarist Frank Infant, who he said was an amazing guitarist. Stories of Chapman spending hours and hours with guitar player and Deborah Harry's boyfriend, Christine, getting his guitar parts right. Bassist Nigel Harrison was so frustrated with Chapman's quest for perfection that he apparently threw a keyboard at him. Basically, the sessions were very, very fraught, but what they yielded was well worth it, and this album has gone on to sell over 16 million copies worldwide. 6 of the album's 12 tracks were actually released as singles. Half your album being singles just shows that the quality that was on offer here. The album starts with Hanging on the Telephone, which a lot of people don't realise, and myself included, that this is actually a cover. The original outfit that recorded and wrote and recorded Hanging on the Telephone were called The Nerves. If you listen to the Nerves version of it, it's miles behind what Blondie did with the song. Track 2 on the album is One Way or Another, which has that really cool vocal line and guitar riff that propels the song. Absolutely iconic song. Picture This was actually the first single off the album, a lesser known of Blondie's songs, but that's a really great song. Fade Away and Radiate was not a single, but this is a really gentle song where Deborah Harry's vocals are very different to her normally, very, very soft and quite sultry. And it's worth noting that Robert Fripp of King Crimson actually plays guitar on this track as well. Now, I've always thought of Blondie as a new wave and to a lesser extent a punk band, because they came up through the underground scene in New York, playing places like CBGB's, and just that the cool New York punk scene that was going on in the mid to late 70s. It's not until you actually spend time listening to their music that you realise how much the whole band, and Debbie Harry in particular, how influenced they are by 1950s rock and roll and doo-wop. I mean, there's a cover on this album, a Buddy Holly cover, I'm Gonna Love You Too, and it makes perfect sense. If you didn't know that it was, you wouldn't blatantly go, oh, this doesn't sound like them. And Deborah Harry has actually been gone on record as saying that she loves Ronnie Spector's Wall of Sound artist, so girl groups from the 50s like the Ronettes, the Shangri-Las, the Crystals. And you can hear it in her approach to vocals. Perfect example, listen to Pretty Baby and the way that the song starts, and she is doing spoken word parts that just sound like you've just walked into a diner from the 50s. Then when the song gets going. Just the layers of vocals as well, just is so reminiscent of that Ronnie Spector sound. Another glaring example of the kind of influence of the 50s on the band as well is in the chorus to brilliant single Sunday Girl, which must have one of the most iconic vocal lines. But during the chorus, you know, you've got the hand clapping, which, you know, is just brilliant and ridiculously hooky. I guess with all this said, that it's not really that much of a leap, because, you know, a lot of acts in punk rock and new wave was kind of influenced by that era. I mean, look at the Clash; they all looked like Teddy Boys, you know, and a lot of punk, you know, chord sequences were just rock and roll sped up and played rawer, dirtier, and, you know, less well, essentially. Other than One Way or Another, probably the most well-known song on this album, well, I'd say definitely, would be Heart of Glass. And for me, it's actually, I hate to be a contrarian, but sometimes that's the way that your point of view falls. And I mean, there was some backlash towards this song anyway, because as hugely successful as it was, it basically is, it's a disco track, you know, and there was a lot of rock acts at that time, around that time, that were doing a disco song, because of what, you know, disco was it then. Drummer Clem Burke is the most vocal in saying that he absolutely hated it. Speaking of Burke, actually, as a drummer myself, it's something that I always pay extra special attention to. And I'll be honest, Burke's drumming on this is so good. Just the energy in his style, perfectly suited. It's hard to think of anyone else that would do a better job for Blondie. And I love when you see live footage of Blondie, just how, just the way that he just controls his drum kit is really interesting to watch. It sounds obvious, but the clear star of the show here is Debbie Harry. She's not the most technically gifted of singers, but wow, I mean, you know it's her from a mile off. And also just her different inflections and ways that she approaches each song is just brilliant. She's just a really creative singer. And saying she's not the most technically gifted doesn't mean she's a bad singer. She's not. But, you know, it just shows that if you've got the inventiveness and the approach that she does, that it doesn't hinder at all. Right, guys, there's another one. Thank you so much for joining. That was Parallel Lines by Blondie. As always, please let me know what you think. If you're a fan of this album, really keen to hear from you. If you don't know this album at all, really keen to hear from you. Give it a go. And yeah, we'll see you on the next one. Stay rad.